All right, hello everyone. My name is Levi Holscher. I'm a tooling engineer at SpaceX in Hawthorne, California. And yeah, I'd love to tell you a little bit about myself and just talk about some of the soft skills I use in the workplace and some stuff I guess I wish I knew in high school. And yeah, hopefully this is helpful. So yeah, I already said my name is Levi. I work at SpaceX. I went to college in California at Cal Poly for 4 years, and then I moved out to Texas to work on Starship, which is the Mars rocket. And I worked there for about a year and a half, and then I just recently moved back to California, where I still work on the same rocket, just different stuff. So I guess the way I got there was in college. I had an internship with HP, and I learned a lot of robotics stuff, and I really liked that. But I'd always wanted to get into aerospace, and so I landed an internship with SpaceX, working at Vandenberg, which is a launch site in California. And so from there, I moved over to excuse me, I moved over to Texas when I went full time and started working on Starship. Um, I guess the way that I got there is kind of interesting too, because when I was first learning about engineering and kind of how I wanted to go into my field of choice, I always thought I wanted to do robotics. I talked about my internship at HP, and all that was basically robotic design around printers. I really liked that, and I took a lot of robotics classes in college, but as I kind of got more interested in space stuff, there wasn't a lot of applications for robotics. So I kind of moved more into just general mechanical stuff with fluids and thermo and whatnot. But then interestingly, I've kind of worked my way back into robotics with the tooling I do now. I make a lot of robotic welding equipment. So a rocket is basically a big sheet metal tank that you fill with propellant. And so there's a lot of precision welds that need to happen for those sheet metal parts to go together and be able to withstand the pressure from flight and just from loading the tanks. So yeah, I'd like to talk a little bit about soft skills now that I use, which are just an incredibly significant portion of my job. I feel like half the time I'm working on technical stuff, and half the time, or more than half the time, there's a big overlap. I'm working with other people, and yeah, it permeates all the work I do. So yeah, there's a few different soft skills I guess I want to touch on. The first one is grit, and just the importance of like being able to get through tough times to make things happen. I can think of a few examples, like in college, there'd be like a tough week or something that you just have to get through. And maybe this 1 week out of a 10-week quarter, even though it's only like 10% of the quarter, would have like 50% of the impact on that quarter's grades. Another example is at work. We often have like these big checkpoints, and just like being able to push through. There are times when, yeah, like the significance of one unit at a time is so much higher than other units at a time. Especially when you're like crunch time or prime time, right before a deadline, being able to like do your best in those times and like really perform under pressure goes a long way. And the flip side of that too is like knowing when to ease off the gas so that you're rested to be able to hit it hard later. That's something I think I've had to learn a lot in my time at SpaceX. It's a really intense work culture where people just want to go, go, go all the time. But it's not just like when do you throttle it on. If there's going to be any sort of like dynamic range there, you got to know when to turn it on and when to turn it off. So yeah. A couple other soft skills I want to talk about are communication. I think communication is kind of just used as an umbrella term a lot of the time, and there's not like specifics that anyone talks about. But really, like what you do ends up affecting a lot of people. And so making sure those people get the information they need quickly and efficiently goes a long way. Really just making sure somebody gets the information they need to know is only half of it. Making it efficient both for you and them is the other half of it. If it takes you like an hour to write an email, like you're wasting your own time. And yeah, like it just goes both ways. Another soft skill I use all the time is just like having a positive attitude. Work can be fun or not fun. Um, it's partially not up to you, but it's also partially up to you. And being around people that have a positive attitude make the day so much more enjoyable and make me really appreciate where I'm at. Um, and being one of those people is just invaluable to your team and really makes you like a more hireable, more desirable employee and just person to work with. And then the last soft skill that I want to talk about for this one, I want to talk about for a little longer is teamwork. There's so many different aspects to that, so I'll just touch on a few. But I think this is one of the things that can be like improved upon most in school that, or like before you have a real job, that doesn't necessarily get emphasized enough. So one aspect of teamwork that I've kind of learned as I've gone into college and especially had a job but didn't have so much in school, is this concept that there are a ton of very smart people at my job, and knowing how to like work with and utilize those people well goes a long way. Like the lone wolf strategy that sometimes worked in school where like you have a group project and like 2 out of 4 people aren't doing anything and one person's doing a little bit, and then you have to like hero the project out to make it work. Like that does not work in the real world. Like you will get beat every time by a team that has 4 people working. So just understanding how to make sure everybody's doing things that they're good at, and also like just making sure people are all working at the same time and doing things they're good at. I guess that kind of rolls into another point of teamwork, which is this concept of kind of like picking your battles for what problems you want to solve and what problems you don't want to solve. I don't think this happens very often at school, but in the workplace, a big problem we run into all the time is like, do we want to design our way out of this problem or do we want to buy our way out of this problem? And what I mean by that is there might be some technical problem to solve, and you could design a solution for it, but it will take engineering bandwidth or time, and it might create conflict or it might grow somebody's engineering skills, like good and bad things to it. Or you might be able to like just buy an off-the-shelf solution, whether that means like something already exists, like literally an off-the-shelf solution you can just buy and plug and play, or even like buy contractors or like other people that are not part of your company to do the work. I feel like that's like a really specific case study of just like picking your battles and knowing when to embrace problems that are like going to grow your team and make things better, or pass on problems because they're not going to be helpful to your team. That actually transitions into another kind of like within teamwork sub point of like another way you can improve teamwork, I think, in like high school or just like before even having a job, is like learning how to develop your team members, and like grow them. I look back to my time in high school. I think one of the opportunities I had to practice this most was in Science Olympiad. Just the way that our team was set up then was basically there was like the equivalent of a varsity team and a junior varsity team and like kind of a freshman or new people team. And working with the younger people, or like when I was on the equivalent of varsity team, working with the junior varsity and the freshman team, and to like grow those team members is so valuable. Like it's insane the amount of value add that is to the whole program. I know in school, like there's not really a lot of opportunities to practice this when you're just doing like regular assignments with your classmates, because most stuff is pretty individual. And if you're working as a team, most likely you guys are all at roughly the same level, with different, skills you might have on a group project. But I think this becomes really apparent when you're like working with people that are younger and older than you. In fact, we like at work we just had performance reviews very recently, and like a full like a full thing that you get graded on is how well you can build up your team members and turn them into better engineers and better employees. So, yeah. Okay, cool. So lastly, I just want to give maybe some reflection and advice on, like, specifically for high school students, how, like, I guess if I was doing high school again, what advice or what things I would take more or less seriously. I guess, well, two things come to mind really. There's two things that I'd like really take less seriously and be less concerned about. The first one, this is for like people who are choosing to go to college. I would be way, way less focused or concerned about like which college I actually get into. Um, and I say this now from experience, because like I consider the company I work for, SpaceX, to be one of the most prestigious engineering companies in the world, and really like the cream of the crop. The cream of the crop engineering talent. It kind of in the same way that maybe for colleges you might think of like Ivy Leagues or like a Stanford as like this cream of the crop top school. Um, but looking at my job, like people came from everywhere. Like there are SpaceXers from so many random no-name colleges, University of Alaska or Idaho, or honestly, there are people that didn't even go to college and just studied really hard independently. So I would be less concerned about that. Another thing I would be less concerned about is this concept or idea that you're boxed into some sort of a career and that you need to like choose what you want to do when you're 18 for the next 50 years of your life. That's kind of just nonsense. It's like really easy to move around and like change careers. It might not be like instant to go from, being a biologist to being an electrical engineer, but like if your interests change over time, which likely they will, there's going to be options for you to like pursue those different career interests. Um, and yeah, I think pretty much anyone would tell you that. Like, really don't be scared that you're going to be boxed into a career. Another, I guess, piece of advice I'd have for myself is I wish I wish I would have, and I would encourage you to spend more time understanding how you learn effectively or efficiently. I think this is one thing that I learned in college really well, and I wish I would have learned earlier, is like know how you learn stuff. And I don't just mean like, are you an auditory or visual learner? I mean like know how you know when you have learned something. So one example of this is in college, like none of the homework I did was almost ever graded, but I still needed to know if I knew how to do something, because when the test would come, like you either know it or you don't. And so like one thing that I learned for myself is like for math, for example, with math things, if I could just do the 3 hardest problems on any given like homework set in a row without making a mistake, I knew I was like ready for the test. And so instead of doing like a full set of 20 problems, I might do, the first couple until I think I got it, and then do those last 3 as a check. That's just like one example in my life. But there are a lot of ways to know how you learn well. Yeah, just I would really invest in you knowing how you learn well. And then the last thing I guess I would give advice to myself about is like knowing what is out there in terms of careers. I think I had a really narrow mindset of what different career options there are out there, and like also what careers used which skills. Like for example, I thought that being a software engineer would be sitting at your computer all day writing code, and I'm not a software engineer, but I've now learned that is like definitely not the case. There's a lot more going on, a lot more interaction and like creative abstract thought. So I'd really just encourage you to be curious and like actually learn what all is out there, and make sure that you're not just like assuming things. Yeah. So this last last piece of, I guess, advice I would have is like, if I was in your shoes and I was like thinking about what I wanted to do going forward, um, like what, the next 5 years of life might look like. Um, couple thoughts. One is I would actually really encourage you, if you have any interest in it at all, to like look into trade schools. Trade schools are really really practical. I feel like they don't get the appreciation they deserve. Um, and yeah, I'm thinking about like how I work. I work with a lot of welders, and like those guys make so much money. Like they make like double, triple what I make. I'm not even kidding. Um, or like being an electrician or a plumber or something, like those are cool jobs, and you help a lot of people. So that's what my first thought. And my second thought is relating to college. And I guess looking back, I kind of see college as it is like a good investment, because a lot of careers like require a college degree, but also like looking back, college is also kind of just like a fun time and like an enjoyable life experience. And so if that's like that should be a consideration too in terms of like what you want to do with like the next 5 years or 4 years or whatever of your life. Um, yeah, like college is a good investment generally, and it's super fun. But like, I wouldn't over, I would, yeah, I would not like overemphasize that necessarily. Like, trade school is a great option, and also, um, like everything that you can learn in college, you actually also don't need college for. Like, it is totally possible to just like read textbooks and learn on your own. It's a lot harder, but it's totally possible. Um, and on top of that, after graduating college, there's a good chance you're only going to use like a fraction of the things you learned in your actual job. So, um, yeah, I would just maybe have a little bit wider perspective on what college actually is, and maybe talk to more people that you know and trust, and have like similar interests too, in terms of career options, so you can get a better idea of like if college is a good option, what that might look like. Um, yeah. Oh, and one other thing too. Um, if I was like thinking about summer jobs or like what I might be able to do now in high school to better prepare myself for the future, I think I'd try and pursue jobs that are a little bit like more challenging for what I might want to do, instead of just what's easy. Um, One example of this is like for my career, which is like being a mechanical engineer. Um, Being like working at Taco Bell and being like a machinist actually have like pretty similar prerequisites. Like, to work in a machine shop, like all you need to know is like how to turn a wrench and like pull the trigger on like a drill, and like these are pretty simple tasks that are no more complex than learning how like a deep fryer works or something. So I would just like encourage you to actually look for jobs that are going to challenge you and help you learn about things that you might want to explore in the future, and don't just kind of like settle for what's easy. You'll probably get a lot out of that. Um, yeah. So thank you for listening to this. I hope this was helpful. Um, yeah. Let me know, or let Mr. Chase or whoever's doing this know if this was helpful. And yeah, thanks for listening. Have a great day.